Hi, I'm Diane Harris with Quiltmaker, and today I wanted to do a short little video tutorial about how to miter the corners of quilt binding. It's a really easy technique and it makes your quilts look so much nicer when it comes to the binding. It can be a little hard to understand if you see it just in still photos, so a video tutorial will help you see how this is done successfully. So my sample here is sort of a pretend quilt to which you're sewing a binding. And for some binding techniques, you sew the binding to the back of the quilt and bring it around to the front. And then for most binding techniques, you actually sew it to the front of the quilt and you'll pull it to the back later. So this technique for mitering the corners works whether you're sewing it to the front or the back. So the first thing you do, as you're sewing your binding onto the quilt, you come along here and you want to put a pin 1/4 of an inch from this edge that you're sewing towards. So you can eyeball it or measure if you need to, but you put that pin and you're sewing towards that pin. When you get to the pin, you stop and you can either back stitch 3 or 4 stitches and then take this out of the machine, or you can approach the pin and then sew at an angle 45 degrees just off the corner of the quilt. So either one works. Here I've just sewn up to the pin and then back stitched about 3 stitches. Otherwise you can stop at the pin and then sew off at the angle. Either one of those works for mitering the corner. Once you've done that, you can get rid of the pin, and I turn this so that it's oriented like so. It makes the most sense to me that way. So it helps if you orient it like this. You want to take this tail that would be much longer than my sample because it's the whole rest of your binding. You're going to pull it up, straight up, away from yourself, and then you're going to fold it back down onto itself, just like so. And what you get here is kind of a little waving flag that's sort of shaped like a triangle. And you want to kind of fool around with this until everything lays real nicely and very flat, and then you're going to start sewing back here and sew on down this side of the quilt. And then as you come to this next corner, you will do exactly the same thing. So I wanted to show you this one. You can see where I've done that stitching. I did my fold where I sewed up to the pin and then back stitched, and then I took it up away from me and back down onto itself to create my little flag here. And here you can see then I've continued stitching this next side. So that's how you would do all 4 corners of your quilt. Now the other thing that I would tell you before you go forward is that you want to trim off the corner here to reduce bulk. Just take a tiny little triangle off there. You can see my triangle is really tiny because when you pull this around to the other side, it makes less bulk there if you've cut that little corner off. And one other thing that really is helpful here, when it's time to pull the whole thing around to the other side, this is how the miter will look. It just lays so nicely in there. And if you look at the other side, you'll want to do the same thing to miter the other side. And then however you're going to secure this down by hand or machine. But here's the trick to get these to work nicely. Do you see how on this side the fold is coming from this direction? It's from my left. On this side, if I make that fold come from the left, it doesn't work as nicely as if I do the opposite. Make the fold come from the right and then make my miter. For some reason, if you do them in opposite directions, the miter looks so much nicer on the other side. So those are just some little tricks to help you make your binding corners as beautiful as you can. I hope these little tips will help you make beautiful bindings on all of your quilts. If you liked this video, Give us a thumbs up below, share it on social media, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for being with me.